Hey, sixth graders. Today we're going to be talking about the characteristics of life as we start into our life science unit. We're going to spend this week on characteristics of life and then move into cells. So I need you to create a page in your composition notebook called Characteristics of Life, and then we will get started. If at any point you need to pause because you are not writing fast enough or like I'm going faster than you're writing, go ahead and pause and then just pick up when you are ready. So the first bullet point we need to put into our notebook is biology is the study of life. And we're going to see that as we watch ed puzzles this week and different things. You're going to hear that a couple of times. So make sure that you've got that biology is the study of life. And then the other things on this slide you don't actually have to write down, but just bear with me for a minute. So the study of life ranges from things that can be super, super simple, like one cell organisms that can look something like this. And they are exactly that, made of one cell. Or we can have more complex organisms that are multicellular and they have more than one cell, typically lots and lots of cells. And this would be an example. This is a giraffe beetle, or even humans would be an example of a multicellular organism. So something that's going to have more than one cell versus our little amoeba or bacteria of some sort over here that is one-celled. So we're going to create a list in your notebook under the characteristics of life. So you can do these as bullet points as we get into them, but the characteristics of life are broad in that there's not a general specific list that all scientists in the world adhere to, because life can be such a complex topic. So we're going to look at some general characteristics that are basically agreed upon by scientists that qualify life. And if you've watched the ed puzzles, then you've seen that they don't always have the same category title, or some categories can get split up into two categories. But you should see some kind of the same general characteristics and start to get the idea here of what makes up life. So like I kind of said, that all living things, no matter what they look like or how complex or how simple or how different they're going to be, they're going to share a common set of characteristics. So these characteristics is what we're going to put into our notes as a list. So all living things are made up of units called cells. We can have plant cells, or we can have animal cells. So this picture of the red looking kind of Cheerio looking almost Fruit Loops or something, those are actually blood cells. This first picture that popped up is a plant cell. This bluish purple one down here is a plant cell, specifically an onion cell under a microscope. So if you peeled off just a thin layer of onion, just like a piece of its skin, like not even a whole part of the onion, but just peeled off a tiny, tiny bit. It would almost be like transparent if you did it in your kitchen. It'd be real flimsy. It would kind of look like saran wrap almost. And then you could stick it under a microscope and this is what you would see. And then the other one here in this picture, this is the in the pinkish red. This is a cheek cell under a microscope. And so basically they take like a toothpick type of thing and scrape the inside of your cheek and cells would come off. And you can stick it on a clear slide and put that under a microscope as well. So you can see the difference here in a plant and an animal cell. Typically, animal cells tend to be more round in shape or have a more just abnormal kind of shape, where a plant cell typically is more rectangular in shape. That being said, there are always exceptions, and it is not a safe rule to look at a picture and be like, oh, it's rectangular, it must be a plant, or oh, it's round or rounder in shape, it must be an animal. That can lead to making mistakes. So even though those traditionally might be how they look, we have to be really careful in saying that because it's round, it's an animal, or because it's rectangular, it must be a plant cell. The next bullet point under living things is that all living things can reproduce. So in some form or another, they have to create offspring, be it through laying eggs, live birth, pollination, or even like an amoeba, single-celled organism that is able to literally take and make an exact copy of itself and then split itself in half and make two. In some form or another, they have to be able to create an offspring in order to be considered alive. The third one, all living things grow and develop. And in the Ed puzzle, they also put into this category that they have to be able to evolve. So different animals, depending on what they need to survive, will develop different strengths. And those strengths will continue through their offspring. And we consider that as a process of their growth, development, and evolution. So all living things grow and develop in some form or another. They also must be able to obtain and use materials and energy. So in some form, they have to be able to basically what you and I think of as get food. So plants don't sit down at a table, animals don't sit down at a table necessarily and eat the way you would eat breakfast, lunch, dinner. However, they still obtain energy in some way or another so that they can do things like grow and develop, reproduce, things like that. So plants are autotrophs, which means they make their own food. And so they take energy from the sun and they convert that into sugar through a process called photosynthesis. And that's how they obtain energy. Animals, on the other hand, are going to be in a more prey predator situation where they're going to hunt for their food or eat plants, depending on what type of animal they are. Or like a human, we're going to sit down and eat a sandwich or eat pizza or something to get our energy. Living things also are able to respond to their environment, be that an internal stimulus or an external stimulus that they're responding to, but they respond. So humans, one of our responses would be like if it's hot and we touch something, we would let go. We wouldn't keep holding on to it and hurt ourselves. Plants have another good response to the environment. If you put a plant in a sunny window, it's going to bend and grow towards that sun over time. So you have to keep rotating the plant so that it grows straight. But its tendency to grow towards the sun is its response to the environment. Human sweating when it's really, really hot is also a response to the environment, or a dog panting, or if an animal gets scared and it flies away or it runs away, those would be responses to the environment. I was on a walk yesterday afternoon and saw a frog in just kind of like a puddle of water. And I was going to take his picture, but I got too close and he hopped away. His response was to move and find a safe place because he was scared. He was responding to a fear that like I was a predator or something in the environment. So they respond, and there's tons of responses to the environment and stimuli, and you'll hear some of those in the Ed puzzle too if you've not watched those yet. But responding to the environment is our kind of last category that we're going to talk about. So you've got 5 on your list of characteristics of life. And like I said, there can be more characteristics. Some scientists will add to these characteristics. Some scientists will split them into multiple categories. You'll hear in the videos they talk about like homeostasis, or being able to maintain their balance. So things like to get rid of waste, things like that. So depending on what scientist and what list you're going off of, but these are some big categories that are kind of a good jumping point for deciding if something is alive. So next week we're going to be talking about cells. So make sure you get the Ed puzzles watched for this week so that you are ready to do that.